Maureen Whitman once said, "It's good to talk, but talking about your mental health isn't the easiest thing." When people ask, "How are you?" are they really expecting an answer? I didn't plan to kill myself when I went for a walk one day in 2015. Yet suddenly, I found myself staring at the M5, ready to jump. In that one moment, I just couldn't see a future. That may come as a shock for a few of you. I'm sorry, but only a very few people ever knew. And it's not something I had the strength to talk about. Well, maybe until now. What stopped me was seeing the face of a lorry driver and thinking I'd ruin his life and his family life. I was being selfish. If there hadn't been any traffic, I probably would have jumped. I was in shock. How did I get to this point? I managed to see my doctor and was immediately identified as high risk and assigned a therapist. And in order to understand, you need to know something of my past. My older sister was anagonoplagia, which basically means she's a dwarf. As a consequence, I experienced a great deal of discrimination, bullying as I was growing up in the 70s. And I found it hurt less to make people laugh than getting hit in unwanted fights. At around 9 years of age, my best friend drowned in a swimming pool. And I blamed myself for his death, even though I was not there. I was not allowed to go to the funeral, and no one really talked to me about it. It was the 70s after all. Then at 14, I saw a friend killed by a drunk driver whilst he was crossing a pedestrian crossing. Again, I just got on with it as best I could, and I learned to be angry at the world. By 2011, I was enjoying life. I was learning to jive dance, walking on Dartmoor, sailing, had a great bunch of friends and social life. I even met my wife at Jive. Life was great. But it has a way of hitting you hard when you least expect it. My mum was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, which is a disease that attacks the lungs, and was given 6 months to live. Work were great and gave me all the time off I needed for the last 2 months of her life until she died. Me and my family nursed her around the clock with the help of Macmillan and district nurses who were absolutely amazing. There was an emotional tug of war, wishing your mum would die to take away her pain and then feeling guilty about the thought, but at the same time doing everything you could to stop her fading away. It's not something you want to be reminded of or even talk about. Looking after my mum also highlighted issues I have been having with my knees for the past 10 years. After walking on Dartmoor or drive dancing, my knees would remain painful and swollen for days now. Doctors I consulted all said the same thing. Nothing was wrong if ibuprofen took the swelling down. Finally, I managed to push to see a consultant, and the news wasn't good. Neither of my knees had any cartilage left, and I had anterior cruciate ligament ACL damage on both legs, and posterior cruciate ligament PCL damage on my left leg. Possibly caused by playing rugby, doing kickboxing and other sports in my 20s. My first operation was in 2012 on my left leg and lasted 6 hours and included 9 months of intense rehab. I was getting married later that year, and as a part of my rehab, I choreographed our first dance. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the last time I ever did a proper jive dance. In 2015, after my second operation on my right leg, it proved too painful for me to walk upstairs. Scans show that the ACL has snapped, and as the replacement may have been too weak, and that I would need another operation in early 2016, followed by 9 months of slow rehab. And now I had to give up jive, walking on Dartmoor, sailing for good, and with it, any sign of hope I'd had. I didn't talk to anyone about how angry and frustrated I was feeling. I'm a 70s now. After getting married, we moved into a new house that needed some work done. We employed a building and decorating firm to do it. And to cut a long story short, ended up in a legal dispute with it. I was preparing our case for the courts, and it was rather stressful to say the least. We settled out of court at the end of 2015. But unsurprisingly, right then, my marriage was not in a good place. Nor was I. I just didn't know it. Well, not at the time anyway. And neither did my family or friends. I was my own worst enemy. Always the joker, full of life. And if you look like you're doing fine, everybody thinks you're doing fine. My sister had just been diagnosed with breast cancer at the same time, and so I was off the family radar. I didn't go out much or call anyone. It took too much energy, and I didn't want to talk about it. All my energy went into work. I was on autopilot. Some days I would just come home and collapse on the sofa or bed. I had no stress relievers, but the levels were increasing fast. Pulling myself together and getting on with it was no longer an option. Jumping off a bridge felt like it was. And I'm very thankful to that lorry driver. It's not been an easy path back to recovery, to say the least. There have been a few blips along the way, but the journey has been worth it. I now regularly talk to a wonderful therapist who has helped me find and better understand myself. It turns out that since I was a young kid, I've never really learned how to deal with sadness, grief, or emotion. It all turned to anger. I'm no longer so angry at the world. But lockdown does provide its moments, as a few other things do. I now prioritise my mental health. I play walking rugby at Topsham Rugby Football Club. Restrictions allowed. It's a great way to get physically and mentally fit, play a team sport, and socialise. Just go and Google it. I started painting again, something I did years ago, and I've brought an electric bike to help with my knees and generally go everywhere on it. Before COVID struck and all the lockdowns, I did a comedy course and now do stand-up, sit-down kind of Zoom gigs, really. I've done a few live gigs in London and Plymouth and around 30 Zoom gigs. I'm now divorced, which is a good thing for both of us, and live a happier life. I still get bad days, but have some tools to deal with that. We all set sail in life on different vessels. Some have luxury yachts, I'll put the teeth back in, and others small boats. But only takes one storm for you to find yourself in a life raft, hoping someone can save you. The most important thing I've discovered is that talking helps. Even more so with current events. Sadly, many men don't. We're not taught how to from a young kid. Putting yourself together and getting on with it was never really an option for me, and it didn't help. Asking, how are you? It's just a polite way of saying hello. Asking, how are you feeling? Means they may tell you. A friend of mine's husband had a heart attack, and everyone kept asking her how her husband was. I asked, how are you feeling, Kate? It gave them a chance to open up and talk about themselves. I just listened. Now, before the latest even lockdown 3.0, I think it's called, there were a few of us talking in a pub, each from a different generation, all talking over a few points. I mentioned my mental health issues, and this gave them the opening to start talking about themselves and their own experience. They both suffered different mental health issues, which they hadn't ever told anyone before. We all just opened up, no judgment, no questions. We just sat and listened to each other. An acknowledgement of dark places we have been, and the hope that lies ahead. It felt amazing for so many different reasons. If you are feeling stressed, angry, confused, isolated, or stuck in a tunnel, please talk to someone about it. You are not alone. Don't do that man thing. You can emerge from the tunnel and find a whole new world ahead of you with help. Conversely, if you haven't heard from someone for a while, please don't think that you must have upset them or, hey, they must be okay. Contact them. Ask them how they're feeling. Talk. It's the best thing we can do. I wish I had been able to pick up the phone and speak to someone. I just didn't have the energy and the strength to do that. Now, if you've been affected by this and you haven't got anybody else to talk to, please call the Samaritans on 116 123. That's 116 123. Thank you very much, and please donate at least £5 to my Just Giving page to help young people not suffer as I did. Thank you very much. I'm Keith Brookshire. You can find me on Brokey's Comedy on YouTube if you really feel inclined to.